which connects immigration, security, and demographic issues. I will do it in English, but if you want to answer in Greek, you feel free to answer in English or Greek. I will give the floor first to Mr. Evangelos Dioikitopoulos. He's Associate Professor of Economics at the Athens University of Economics and Business. Mr. Dioikitopoulos, your introductory remarks.
Great. So thank you a lot for the Delphi organizers for inviting me to talk about this very important topic. So today I'm going to frame my discussion on the general topic of the panel, demography, and then I'm going to connect this with immigration. So what I'm going to talk is that there are opportunities from population aging, and these can be also be boosted from immigration. So we live in a world of population aging, which means that we have higher life expectancy and mainly lower fertility. Population aging can give some challenges and for the world we live in, but there are a lot of opportunities. So let me give you, let me tell you a story on about my talk. So imagine that you are a business owner and that you wake up in the morning and you observe that there is no labor to accommodate your production demand. And what happens is that you try to find a solution. Also, some employees are leaving your company. So what's the solution? So first of all, you think about that, okay, let's increase the wages so as to attract more labor. But suddenly you realize that a lot of business owners do the same. They increase the labor cost, and at some point in time, the labor cost becomes unaffordable. So then you scratch your head to find solutions. So you need to find a solution that, with the same amount of workers, to produce more. And how you can do that? By increasing the productivity. So there are three options. One is automation, either substitute workers with machines. Second is AI. You can use the AI to boost the productivity of your workers. Thirdly is innovation. You can innovate to increase the overall production of your economy. So what we observe across countries and across regions around the globe is that places that aging population pressure is high are places that innovate more and automate more. This is a work from Daron Acemoglu, the novelist, the current novelist in economics. So we observe that the problem, population aging, can be an opportunity for change and structural change towards an economic environment of higher productivity growth. Of course, there are costs and benefits. So immigration can help in this way here. So what happens is that innovation is it's a long-run process. It's a risky process and takes time. So at the same time, when you want to find a solution on how to innovate, you need at the same time to find labor to come to work with your company. And this is where immigration comes forward. So according to the macroeconomics of immigration, when immigrants come and they are complements with the society, so this facilitates the diffusion of knowledge in the economy. When they are substitutes on the economy, they can substitute natives. This means that this increases the labor supply and reduces the cost and alleviates the rise in wages due to population aging. So immigration is a solution with the appropriate redistributive policies, but there are some challenges.
And what about the native population if they have, if they are against immigrants coming?
So this is a great question, and let me tell you something from using data as well. So first of all, there is opposition of natives to the immigrants because they fear that they're going to take their works. Secondly, sometimes immigration is connected with crime. However, this is not something that happens in the European data. So immigration has an ineligible effects on crime, firstly. And secondly, immigration, as I told before, with appropriate redistributive policies can boost productivity. And let me give you two success stories from the Greek economy. So let's go back to 1920s that refugees from Anatolia come. So we provide them with a piece of land and so as they can have some living standards in the beginning. And because immigrants are characterized with a very high social mobility, they acquire education and they seek innovative processes, and this boosts the productivity in the Greek sector. This is a work from my colleagues on the Anatolia problem. Let's go to success story number 2. So 1991, immigrants from Albania come. They provide cheap labor cost. They boost construction sector and tourism, and nowadays they are fully integrated. They get married with the natives. They are very good school students, and they provide productivity boost. So these myths of crime, or let's say, we rank very low in the data regarding the trust in refugees, but when there are economic incentives, we overcome these perceptions, and the truth reality is that immigration gives a boost in the productivity and helps the economy.
Thank you for your optimistic remarks. It shows that both demographic challenges and migration challenges can have a positive outcome in the end. Now, Mr. Aris Alexopoulos, head of the Crete Center of Population, for your introductory remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Allow me to extend my thanks to the Delphi Economic Forum for this kind invitation, and for inviting me to the forum and to participate on behalf of the Crete Center in this population movement-related session. The OECD Crete Center is recently established, is an initiative taken by the Greek government jointly with the OECD, established to assess global demographic changes and population movements, which include migration, to assist governments in developing efficient policy responses to the challenges they pose. Looking at the figures, based on the research which is done by the OECD, we observe that the last 2 years, 2023, to the OECD countries, migration reached a record level for third year, the year before the current year, in a row, which includes regular permanent migrants and also irregular and non-documented migrants. So this has fueled widespread concern about migrants and the impact on the receiving countries, and has put migration on the top of political agenda. We realize following the elections across Europe, it's on the top of the people's agenda. In many countries, in many OECD countries, which are facing widespread labor market shortages, we observe and frightening demographic changes. I can explain you later. I mean, our colleague here said which is the situation on the demographic, but it is frightening, the figures. The increase of labor migrants maintains sustained economic growth, to put it briefly. But we have to prove it. There is a big gap between perception and reality. More evidence, we need more evidence to fuel them in the public discussion. We need, and the message is that we need more efficient management control on the regular documented migration and a better control to the illegal flows. But we have to deliver this message and to insist to deliver this message. This is a part of the solution. Migration is part of the solution, and unfortunately for many problems, such as the demographic problems, there is no alternative. You cannot improve the fertility rate for the next 20, 30 years. There is no public policy that can reverse this shrinking in the population. And historically, population movements always figure that if you find a way to manage it in an efficient manner, you produce better results with regards to economic growth and the standards of living. This is what the history says, but as I said it at the beginning of my speech, that we have to prove it because the perceptions in the public is different. And I stop here.
Thank you. So immigration is inevitable, I guess, in order to solve our internal demographic problems in Europe. Now to you, Susanne Raab, the member of the National Council of Austria, which is the lower parliament, and a former minister, federal minister of women, family, integration and media, for your introductory remarks.
So thank you so much for having me in wonderful Greece, wonderful Delphi. Love to be here. Well, first of all, to follow up on what you said before, it's important if we're talking about migration that we make a distinction between different forms of migration, because they are totally have different impacts. If we are talking about migrants coming directly to the labor market, having a concrete job, applying for this job, and then coming to the job. So that's completely different from migrants coming out of other reasons, especially refugees. Unless the topic of this panel is balancing security and humanitarian aspects in terms of migration, I would focus on migrants coming out as coming to Europe as refugees. And your last sentence gave me the link to my speech, which is the perception changed the last years. So I'm working in the field of migration and integration for more than 15 years now. And just give you an example out of one member state of the European Union, which is Austria, obviously my home country. It was the following. Austria had always to handle migration flows. First, there were a lot of guest workers from Turkey in the 60s. Then in the 90s, we had this huge influx of refugees coming from the former Yugoslavia. And then we had always this kind of controlled resettlement programs where we actively participated as a state. And we have an influx of displaced persons from Ukraine, definitely. We have actually, at the moment, 100,000 Ukrainian displaced persons living in Austria, which is not like that amount of people who live in other neighboring countries, but still. And then I'm sure you are aware of the fact that in 2015 and since 2015, there were the so-called refugee crisis, where all of a sudden more than 100 people entered the Austrian border. And this was a change of the perception of people, a change of also of policies followed. Why? Because, first of all, it was the feeling that the state lost control about who is coming. It was a lack of trust in the control, and the state's sovereignty followed. It was the feeling that no longer the states decide upon who is coming or not, but smugglers and human traffickers decided so. So there was, as I said, a change of the perception. And still, since then, since 2015, we had years, for example, in 2019 and 2022, where Austria per capita had the largest number of asylum applications within the European Union. And the thing is that the people also stayed, you know. And this had a huge impact on integration capacities, because we also have large numbers of family reunification. And to be honest, also talking about different groups of migrants coming, we are talking about people who are coming with completely different values, you know? And we see, just to give you one fact, because I'm also very, very keen on fact-based policies, in 2022 we made a survey about the qualifications of the people coming to us, which are mostly people from Syria, Afghanistan and Iraq. And we saw that 65% of the people who started a German language course in Austria, and everybody is obliged to do so, there are compulsory measures, is illiterate. And 50% of those who are illiterate in their own mother tongue. You know, this is because the people have been on the way since years, have been somewhere in refugee camps in other regions, you know. And we have to really start with basic measures. It's not like they are prepared for the labor market. It needs years to bring them on a level where we can integrate them into the labor market. So these are the facts. And if we want to address this, if we want to regain trust and maintain order, we need a consistent, common system. So if we want to to protect the existence of an asylum system based on humanitarian needs, we have to come back to a system, or we have to not come back, we have to invent a system, a common European system, which gives back the legal enforcement and the power upon the decision who is coming and who is not to the states, and in that sense also to the European Union. So this also includes ensuring return, because those who apply for asylum and obviously do not get a positive asylum application have to go back. This is also legal enforcement, and this is also rule of law. And then I think it's really important that we do not neglect no longer that this has an impact on integration. So there were a lot of years before, there were a lot of people saying, if we are tolerant enough, it will work out in terms of integration, but that's not the fact. It's hard work. It's a huge investment. And of course, it needs, from both sides, engagement. And I really feel that we have to work as European Union and as states with countries of origin and countries of transit at an eye level. The European Union is the number one donor of humanitarian aid in other countries. Those are countries of origin where migrants come to the European Union. So we have to talk upon that, and of course we have to try to give the people perspectives in their countries of origin, also when we are talking about humanitarian needs. So because migration flows cannot be the answer in each and every sense. So coming back, as you mentioned, or bringing to the table a consistent migration system, a fair but a strict one, is the number one priority in that sense. And I think that the Migration and Asylum Pact of the European Union was a good step in the right direction, but there is still a way to go.
Thank you, Mrs. Raab. I'll come later in the question time to the concept you mentioned of the cultural integration of migrants. And now to you, Mr. Mitarachi. He's a member of the Greek Parliament and the former Minister of Asylum and Migration and Asylum.
Thank you. Many thanks for the kind invitation. Many thanks to the audience for attending. And if I may recognize my successor in the Ministry of Migration, Professor Keridis, and my successor in the Ministry of Labour, Professor Tsakloglu. Thank you so much for coming. Migration is a reality. It's a necessity, parenthesis, terms and conditions apply, but also a challenge. I will argue two things today. First of all, there's a very big difference between illegal migration and organized migration. Obviously, economies need people. They might need people for seasonal work. They might need people for project work. And these are two areas where I think Greece should emphasize our recruitment strategies for the years to come, especially for our tourist industry, our construction industry, where we do need people, but for a certain period of time. So legal migration is something countries have to do. Get students in, that's very critical. Get human capital, get investment people in. This is very healthy, and I think most European Union countries are competing for human capital today. But there's a huge difference between legal and illegal migration. What is happening today in Europe, it is the smugglers that choose who will come and live here. It's people that pay a fee to come illegally into the European Union, and our ideology in Europe has moved too much to the left in the last decades. The pendulum has moved away from the rights of sovereign countries to the right of smugglers. And this is a big challenge that Europe needs to face. We have an obligation to protect our external borders. We have an obligation to our societies to return those that are not entitled to international protection under international law. So that's the first key message I want to send. The second message, obviously, for economists, people are numbers, and societies are a sum of numbers. This is not real. Societies are much more than a sum of numbers. There are political, social, cultural, and many other considerations when we talk about migration. There were two examples offered before in cases of migration towards Greece. I think they're very dissimilar to what we're facing since 2015, as Dr. Raab mentioned. The case of Greeks returning back to Greece in the 20s because of the disaster in Asia Minor, it's people of the same culture, the same language, the same religion, similar aspirations coming back to the mainland. It's more similar to what the government is trying today to do with the brain gain initiatives, where we're trying to motivate successful Greeks that are working in many European countries and they have benefited from that exposure to come back to Greece and bring this knowledge back to our country. The case of people moving into the Greece in the 90s were people with a very similar cultural background, more similar than we thought originally, and obviously without many differences that created a separation in society. But it still took 30 or 40 years for this group of people to integrate. Integration asks the question, do societies have a capacity? And the answer is yes, we have a capacity. We cannot integrate an unlimited number of people in a very short time window. And we shouldn't be asked to do so either. I mean, our priority, and Susanne and I are elected politicians, so we have bigger considerations than just numbers. We also need to provide for the well-functioning of our societies. So yes, do provide for the labor force needed, but also have policies of successful integration of people that choose to come to our countries, and therefore I will argue they're expected to comply with our general cultural background because they choose to come here. It means that they like what we do. So that's critical for integration, but that integration again has a limit. What happened in 2015, that was a very good point, Susanne. It created a shock in European societies because we realized that we lost control of our external border. And if I can go back, and that's my last point, so I can not take too much of your time. If we go back to the Geneva Convention, which is the basis of global humanitarian law, it talks about people coming directly from an area where they are in danger to an area where they are safe. This is not done anymore in the world. We see refugees becoming a global travel card, people moving from far away, crossing countries and countries and countries to go where they want to go. This is not what humanitarian law was about. In the case of Ukraine, and it's one of the highlights of my career, I was a member of the Council of the European Union when we took the historical decision to open the European borders to people coming from Ukraine. I remind you, Ukraine borders 3 member states of the European Union, and they were at a direct risk because of the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine. So Europe has proved many, many times that we are open to refugees and we are ready to preserve our obligation under international law. But we cannot allow the smugglers to continue to drive migration flows to the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Platon Tinios, Professor Emeritus at the University of Piraeus.
I'm the last speaker in the panel, so I can not fail but notice that there's a clash of civilizations. There's the economists and the politicians.
Yes.
And economists, we see immigration as a solution to some very important worldwide existential problems. Aging and longevity is only one. Climate change is another. And for those two, immigration is part of the planet's homeostatic mechanism for self-correcting the problem. So what politicians seem to be doing is they're given a solution and they're trying to find a problem to match the solution. I'll give you another story. There was a guy called Friedrich Trump, who was he was drafted into the Bavarian army in the 1880s, and he didn't like it, and he left as a refugee to the United States, and we all know how that story ended, and well, it's still ending, incidentally. So if the politicians had their way, I think the world would have one problem less now. Now, going back to the solution in search of a problem, it is true, all these things about cultural issues, etc., they're overblown. We want to overblow them. In fact, even in the Asian Minor disaster, a lot of the Karamanlides were actually Turkish-speaking. They didn't speak a word of Greek. And they were integrated fine. My own family left Asia Minor. We did not choose to go to Greece. We went to Egypt, where we were a minority. We were different religion. We didn't speak the language. They had to learn French, incidentally. We did fine. The way the world develops, and world development is a story of immigration. We can see it in the United States. We can see it in Greece. We can see it the world over. And I'll just finish by another particular case. Population aging. The worst problem ahead of us is the problem of long-term care. Who will care for the 80-year-olds, us, in 10 years' time? The number of over 80s will triple, and they will have far fewer children to look after them than in the past. And the people who take care of the over 80s, the world over, certainly both in Scandinavia and in Italy and Greece, are female immigrants. And we're stopping them now. So what happens when I become 80, and I might need somebody to look after me, I'm looking at my wife now, but I'm sure she wouldn't want to be bothered, and there probably won't be anyone to look after me. So this is the problem. We have the solution. Let's try not to block it.
Thank you, Mr. Tinios. Now I will ask a few questions, but please be brief because we have less than 10 minutes left. First, questions to the professors of economics in the panel. Are there any viable, given the current economic situation, viable economic solutions to increase birth rates both at the Greek and the European level? Mr. Dioikitopoulos.
Okay, thank you. I will answer this question and also would like to comment on what the panel told. Okay, as I told you, my opinion is that we don't have to target on the birth rates. We have to target on the opportunities that population aging gives us. So that's innovation and AI adoption and increasing productivity. Productivity, for me, is the solution to the problem. For example, lower amount of people in the history, the human history, was the reason that we took off from the Malthusian era. And also lower amount of people means lower emissions. So this is not the problem of the birth rate, but it's because the birth rates are going to increase endogenously. For example, if you have innovation in the society and you have a lot of production, this means that you're going to have more income to raise children. So if you target productivity, you also increase the birth rates in the economy. So this is one comment, and a very brief comment is that regarding cultural changes that we told here in the panel. So there is a sweet spot of diversity. Cultural diversity is good, it's not bad. So if we are all the same here, we cannot think innovative ideas. If we are diverse, we can think innovative ideas. But at the same time, if we are too much diverse, we cannot coordinate, and this can create a conflict. So there is a sweet spot of diversity that we can try to respect it, and if you set a very nice framework with the politicians and institutions on this diversity, this is going to create also economic outcomes and productivity and innovation. These are data. Again, I'm talking with the data. It's not my opinion. Okay, I'm going to tell you. Thanks.
Mr. Mitarachi, you want to answer?
5 seconds. Just first of all, I think the correlation between economic productivity and fertility is negative. The more wealthy a society becomes, the fertility declines. And if you see globally, countries with higher fertility rates are countries with lower productivity. That's the one point. The second point, the labor shortage that has been mentioned before, I will argue that it's not driven by fertility rate. It's driven by social choices. The fact that we don't want our children to do the job that our grandparents did is a social choice. It's not an issue of numbers. It's not that we don't have enough people to do the very entry-level works. It's we don't want our children to do the entry-level works. And that, I think, is socially driven.
And you, Mr. Alexopoulos, what do you think? Can we increase birth rates, or is it a problem that will be solved exclusively by more migrants?
I think that it's not an issue of what I believe or I think. If you look at the maths, you see that we can't do it. We can't, of course, improve the situation, but just to give a figure, if you go back in Greece, if you go back in the 80s, we had a fertility rate around 2, a bit less, which has deteriorated now to 1.2, which means practically we have something like 400,000 women at the age between 20 and 40, which are the age that you make kids. So if we now improve the fertility rate, that's why I'm talking about the maths, and you go to double it, still you need something like 20 years until the kids become adults and to start having kids. So the maths say that we are going to live by the 2050 with a population around 6.5 million in Greece. 7, let's say. Okay, it depends on the scenario that you run. Which all plus that we're above, Platon, Tinios mentioned it. We are going to be an aged society, super aged society, with around 50% above 65. So can we imagine what is the shortages for the labor market? Collapse is not the economy, collapse is the standards of living. So you have few people to work, and also you put a huge burden on the long-term care. The long-term care is a very expensive business to have it as a public good, as it is now. Can you imagine with people, just one figure more, around 700,000 people in Greece will be about 75 without any relative next to them to take care of them. So who is going to take care of these people? Here, that's why I mentioned is a solution of legal, regulated and targeted efficient management with population flows, with labor. One figure from the OECD is that the last year, which is a good example, it's a positive story, 6.8 million regular migrants has been integrated in the OECD countries the last 2 years, okay, which is a success story. But also we have this tremendous, the skyrocketed with illegal asylum seekers and all these kind of things. And there is a positive correlation. When we provide and efficient management with the legal pathways, the negative correlation, and then the illegal is reduced. We have to be punctuated on this, and I agree that we need to work on both sides, to send back people that they are not bad, to set up international cooperation on this. The Ukrainian case that it was mentioned by the Minister Mitarachi, the EU countries coordinated and proved that they can do international cooperation on this, and the response was success story.
Thank you.
Also, the EU, last point, so I'm sorry for the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum, I think signed by 1 year ago, it's also a success story. And it's a mixture of to have regulation on how you deal with population movements. And this is, I guess, the slogan that we have to, that's why I was talking about perception. The perception is different, is that we have failure, and we don't have failure.
And thank you. And you, Mr. Tinios, you mentioned that who's going to take care of the elderly population, but who's going to pay the pensions of this elderly population, to pay the people who will take care of them? Is there a short answer to this?
No.
Nobody.
No answer. There's no short answer. You can have a long answer, but there are long answers.
So
this is why we changed the pension system in Greece, partly from defined benefit to defined contribution.
So they can't pay anyone.
so we can protect ourselves from the impacts of aging population.
The Japanese have robots.
I'm very sorry to have to end this. If you have any very short remarks, Mrs. Raab,
well, I think
about
the most
assimilation and integration, but very, very short.
You know, like, those are two different terms, first of all.
I know.
So I really feel that integration is possible. I mean, I was integration minister for 5 years. I feel it's possible, but absolutely. But it depends on, first of all, the capacities of the state in terms of educational system, in terms of school classes, in terms of healthcare system, you know. Also in terms of the labor market, and it depends of the qualifications that people bring with them, absolutely. It's a number also of questions, you know, a question of number. Sorry, it's a question of number. So I absolutely agree, finally, that we need skilled, targeted migration for the labor market, for our pension system, because of our demographics, absolutely. But we have to work against illegal and irregular migration. Those are two absolutely different approaches. We have to make a distinction.
I think there's a consensus on that on the European level. Thank you. I have to end this panel. Thank you, all the speakers, and thanks to Delphi.